So now that Africa, 14 countries in Africa has cut France totally off. They told France that they will not be sending them no 85% of their income. They will not be doing it. They've been doing that shit since 1959 and they will no longer be doing it. France thought that Africa was playing. And no, they weren't.
Hi lovelies, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Belinda Verse or Belinda Dirt channel. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so that anytime I upload videos, you will be the first person to be notified. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries, and educate each and every one of us, you guys are the real MVP. So lovelies, I'm gonna be your today's host, and I have so many statistics to put up here, and we're gonna come out to talk about it. Alright lovelies, let's dive into today's video.
Yo, France is not doing too good right now, and I'm loving it. I'm fucking loving it, man. I made a video months back, and I was saying, without Africa, without Haiti, without all of these countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, all of these countries, France is nothing. France is a third world country, bro. And we seen what's going on right now. France is falling, and I'm loving it. This is what happened when black people come together collectively all around the world. And what happened with Burkina Faso when every black people come together and was out here chanting and protesting and walking, we woke up the ancestors, bro. We did. This is why they're trying to take water down the revolution, but it's still going on.
Breaking news, France is falling. For decades it lived off Africa's resources and power. But now, that empire is crumbling before our eyes. In just months, 14 African countries have kicked France out. Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali and Chad were the first to end military deals and chase out French troops. Then Ivory Coast and Senegal followed, closing French bases, sending soldiers home and cutting ties. Chad has ripped up its defense pact. Ivory Coast is removing 600 French soldiers, and Senegal will close its last French base before the end of 2025. This is more than troops leaving, it's France's lifeline snapping. For years, Paris depended on Africa for minerals, for military power, for survival. Without Africa, France is collapsing under its own weight, its economy sinking, its influence gone. What we are witnessing is history. Africa rising, France falling. The world will never be the same again.
So apparently, France's government is on the brink of collapsing. And y'all know why? Because this has been going on over 50 years. Africa has been sending France 80% of their revenue. Yes, they was in a deal with France, and 80% of the revenue the country made was to go to France. And that's what's been supporting France. France cannot support itself. Africa has been supporting France. And Africa is at the point, so they said, we're not giving you shit else. We're not giving you no more money. And guess what? France is collapsing. They have no money for nothing. I really feel like colonization has come to a head. Like all that shit they've been doing, all the mistreatment and the stealing and the unfairness, it's just coming to a head. So you tell me for over 50 years, Africa has been supporting France, and Africa is poor as shit. Like they don't have nothing for themselves. They should be the richest country in the world because they got so many resources. They go to Africa, they steal their resources, they steal their money. Good for Africa.
Do you ever wonder why the projects is called the projects? Before I get into why, have y'all heard about what Africa did to France? I'm not sure if you're aware, but African countries have been pulling their resources and removing Western powers and people from their resources and their lands, like for the past year and some change. A lot of people may know about Burkina Faso, but this is actually about the effect. That shit is working. The French government is collapsing because it can't sustain itself without Africa. That's what's happening right now, 2025. But back into it. The projects is called the projects because that's exactly what it was. It was one of many projects that was fulfilled by the Works Progress Administration. And a lot of people don't know that the projects was actually built to house white people. And at one point, black people were not allowed to live in the projects. Of course, a lot of these projects were built during the Great Depression, and a lot of people were affected by the Great Depression, but if you can imagine, the government did not care about the black ones, they cared about the white ones. So they built a lot of different housing developments that we now call projects to help house those people. And they did it with funds that were supposed to be allotted for black housing, but of course, we all know how that goes. Did you know this? I'll go into deeper detail about the Work Progress Administration on my Patreon if you want to know more about that. But yeah, did y'all know about this?
France is on fire. Riots, looting, chaos. Europeans just lost their good life. In just one day, over 250,000 people flooded the streets. Burning cars, looting luxury stores, even Paris cafes and historic buildings set on fire. France looks less like a modern state, more like a scene from a dystopian movie. Why? The government plans to cut 43.8 billion euros in spending. For many French, welfare is like air and water, untouchable. But here's the truth. France is broke. That is 116% of GDP, and welfare costs already swallow more than all tax revenue. Left been borrowing just to keep benefits alive. Sound familiar? That's exactly how Greece triggered the Eurozone crisis in 2010. Back then, Europe could still bail them out. But today, Europe has lost industry to the other countries. Left no money, no new tech, and now no stability. France is burning, Europe is drawing in debt. The bomb is ticking. But who's left to save them this time? Stay safe, stay connected. Get yourself a VPN in my bio and comments.
Man, the African nations have shut France down. They didn't think that all this protesting and rioting would lead into Paris. Well, it led into Paris. The French people have this day, this protest day, where it's called Block Everything, and these people are blocking everything from highways to freeways. Nothing is moving, everything is shut down. The French government, they don't even want to give these people their pensions. They taking their holidays away from them. This is just how broke they are. They aren't able to pay anything. Not only that, the African nations have kicked the French military out of Africa. So the military don't even have no place to be. So there are no more French men in the military in Africa. They're using their own military, their own people. France is going through it. They did not think this was going to spill over into Paris, but it has. Things are on fire. They are writing all on those beautiful statues. It is a hot ass mess over there. And Africa, they don't give a shit.
So the French government has fallen again, but international news media is going to be very shy about telling us the real reason why it's fallen, the economic reasons why it's fallen. On his way out, the ousted Prime Minister, Mr. Francois, said, "You might kick me out, you might remove me, but that does not change the economic problems for the country." I'm paraphrasing. The real reason why France has failed as a government is because Africa has taken its power back. Ever since the country of Niger in the Sahel, in Central West Africa, decided to nationalize its uranium, France has never been the same again. This uranium that state-owned companies like Orano, French-owned companies like Orano had been siphoning, stealing under the previous government, today, Niger turned off the faucet. Niger said no more. So Niger, under the new governance of President Tiani, is nationalizing its uranium. This uranium France was stealing not only to light its beautiful cities like Paris and Nice, it was also using it to run its electrical manufacturing and industries. All of these are processing and running their nuclear reactors on top of it all. So these things that are the foundations of an economy, like manufacturing and processing, right now that the electricity in France, their energy is not safe, they do not have a reliable place to get their energy from, this is why they're suffering. But it's not going to be told that way on international news media. You're only going to hear it from people like me and others who are truth tellers. So yeah, this is why. This is what happens. This is proof that African leaders are in service of either them or us.
France is collapsing and their economy is in shambles, but there is something a lot of people is not telling you. The reason why France is collapsing and their entire civilization is up in flames is because Africa, the continent, is cutting them off. Multiple African countries is cutting off France from their resources. You understand why a handful of African countries seem so poor based on perspective? It is because 90% of their income, of their earnings from their resources goes directly to France, and that stabilizes their economy. Niger, for example, cut off France from their uranium, and now Niger is going to use their uranium for their benefit alone. For the longest time, I have waited for this. I waited for the collapse of Europe and see if they can actually manage to pull through without the resources of Africa. Can Europe actually strive without the colonialism on Africa? Is it possible? We're about to find out. The UK is also facing significant pressure from Nigeria, because Nigeria is thinking about cutting these people off as well. If you ask me, Nigeria should have done that by now. Get rid of teaching French in schools and focus on your own language. Ethiopia just opened up a massive game changer, created one of the biggest dams in the world. The day of European rule is coming to an end, and the rise of Africa is finally upon us. I think it's about that time to go back home. I think it's time. But first, a couple things. The civil war in South Sudan and the war that is happening in the Congo. That needs to end ASAP. And all the other conflicts that is happening within the African continent in these African countries needs to be settled immediately. Italy, Roma, Spain, they're all facing the pressure of being cut off or already cut off from African resources. Ladies and gentlemen, colonialism is coming to an end, and I couldn't be happier. Yes. Now we just gotta wait for America to cut off Africa and we'll be golden. That's all I gotta say in the matter. It's Onyx and I'm gone.
So about 2 years ago, I made a video where I was calling out Macron and his and the French government when they were complaining and threatening to come at Niger for saying no more, right? Niger, a nation that they have exploited to absolute beyond abject poverty for decades, right? That they have been the colonial powers that have decimated this nation and many nations in Africa, right? That they were angry that Niger finally said enough is enough, we're cutting you off. Get out of our land, we're no longer doing business with you. If we die, we die by our own means. If we live by our own means, no longer because of your exploitation and colonialism and racism and just your death machines, right? And France and Macron complaining, how dare you do that? And I had so many French people come on those comments and tell me that I was wrong for thinking the way that I did because, hello, Africa can't just do that. Those operations and those plans, those mining plans belong to France. Okay, but does the land belong to France? Does the gold? Do the human beings who lose their lives mining in the most devastating conditions, are they also owned by France? And this is the crazy thing. The Western world and Eastern powers, a lot of the world for hundreds and hundreds of years has genuinely believed that they own Africa. that they absolutely own Africa, that how dare Africans realize that they are sovereign? How dare they take a stand against any Western power? Do they not know who they are? Well, now I say to you, friends, do you know who Africa is? You always have. You always have, so much so that one of the former presidents of Africa, can't remember his name, it's not really significant, he spoke truth. He said that if Africa was ever to cut us off, we would become a third world nation. Not maybe, not we would struggle a little. We would become a third world nation. And lo and behold, beautiful sounds in my ears that over 11 and more countries are counting in Africa have said no more to France. Just 11, mind you. Just 11 in the continent have said no more. And the government of France and its economy are clutching the pearls that were afforded them by Africa. Clutching their pearls. And I agree, like I am sad for what their citizens are now going to experience. I am sad. Their citizens don't deserve to experience what they're going to experience. But guess what? For hundreds of years, the world over has looked at Africa, looked at its suffering, has known the history, and still fixed their mouths and minds and hearts to say, oh, well, it's just Africa. As though Africans are just inherently corrupt, inherently evil, inherently dangerous, inherently violent, right? That all our problems, all the wars, all the exploitation, it was us. Had nothing to do with the white man, nothing to do with the powers that have not just decimated populations by the slave trade for hundreds of years, but then came back and enslaved so many nations in Africa, and really the entire continent, really, right, has been bound by these colonial powers and affected. Yet it's us. Yet inherently it's us. And that collective, selective, and chosen, because it's very deliberate, the ignorance that people have and have had about Africa cannot just be attributed to, but the government lied to me. As human beings who had the ability to learn, you chose to live in blindness. I can only imagine the confusion that many French people are now going to feel when they realize, yeah, we are that shit. We are that shit. You always needed us more than we needed you. Right? You're meant to be wonderful. You're meant to be wonderful. You don't need us. We're just savages. We can't control ourselves. And listen, I call out the corruption in Africa. My own government, the Congolese government, I will always call out its corruption. But that's one side of the coin. But world over, everybody only ever wants to look at that one side of the coin, and they never want to look at Africa for the miracle that it is. Everyone conveniently forgets the Arab slave trade. Almost 800 years. And this happened before the transatlantic slave trade. So you have a continent. Now we're about 1 billion people, 1 billion some people, right? And climbing. Hallelujah. Back then, that was not our population. But you had the Arab slave trade for as long as it lasted, as devastating as it was. Please do your research. Please go and research what happened to the continent of Africa and its people during that slave trade. That everybody just conveniently...
I'll not be feeling good, Greg. I think there's something that make me, feel better. I feel better, yeah. Emmanuel Macron, how is it going? Well, how is it going for you? How is it going in your country, Emmanuel Macron? France, how is it going? Yeah? Remember when you said you've been helping Africa? And they are ungrateful to you that your military bases has been in Africa for 60 years and you did not build one single hospital, not one single road. Instead, you launder, you steal all the resources to make your country rich, and then you turn around and call Africa poor. So Emmanuel Macron, this message is for you. These questions, please answer me. Who is poor now? Until you come on the global stage and apologize to Africans and use your own mouth, as we know it, to say on global stage that without Africa you are nothing. That without Africa, the Western, the European Union, France, they are nothing. Until you come out to say that, this is spiritual warfare. For those of you who follow me, go watch my video, January, February. I said this. I saw Mother Africa angry. This ground, this land is angry. It's angry that every resources she has given her children has been taken away from them, and at the same time mocking her children. She's angry. Y'all go check my video in January. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. Either you guys realize that Africa is the richest continent on the planet, that you guys has been living all of you guys call yourself Emmanuel Macron. France is the third world country. Every other, all of them is third world country. Africa is the richest continent on the planet. Until all of y'all come out, the same your social media, the same all of your media, y'all used to crucify Africa all of those hundreds of years, and you guys are feeding your children, giving your people lights, making an electric vehicle for your people, building hospital with every resource that come out from Africa. Until you guys come out with your own mouth and with your media, calling Africa poor all of those years, until you guys come out to say you guys are the third world country, not the other way around. Until you guys come out with that, with your mouth, it's going to get worse. And this is not about drums and guns and nothing. You're fighting with the spirits. This is not about guns. Don't take my word for it. Y'all go back and watch my video in January. I said it. Calamity is coming. Karma is coming. For those who have been draining Africa, making Africa children suffer. Not just the West, not just the European Union, not just the France, even the people in Africa, so-called leaders in Africa, laundering the money of Africa, making Africa children poor, right? All of y'all will pay the price. All of y'all will pay the price. All of y'all. Mother Africa will not spare nobody. She's arisen since January. And she's going to strike with thunder. She has been doing it. This is just the beginning. Save this video for later. Like the way I said that before, in January, February, March, I make videos about Mother Africa rising, and she's angry. She's angry. So if you, all of y'all, stealing from Africa, you better find a different way now to trade with Africa. Because everything that you stole, everything that you stole from Africa, and still turn around to call them poor, everything that you build with that money will be flushed out with water, will be flushed out with thunder, and it will be flushed out with thunder, with fire. She's fighting with that. Confusion, thunder, fire, and water. Another warning. Another warning to y'all. Another warning to y'all. Coming from the child of Africa. Don't take my word for it. In the next 3-4 months, we're going to look back to this video again.
Alright, Africa has finally hit the point of no return with France For decades, France has been siphoning the wealth of its former colonies, hiding behind treaties and so-called cooperation agreements signed back in the late 1950s and early 1960s. 14 African nations, once colonized and controlled by France, were forced into an agreement where as much as 85% of their foreign reserves were distributed directly into the French treasury. In exchange, France promised military protection, financial stability, and development support, but what did Africa actually get in return? Poverty, underdevelopment, endless curbs and instability. Now, these African nations have said enough is enough. They have cut France off. No more sending money, no more colonial tax, no more military bases dictating policy. And this decision has not only rattled the corridors of power in France, but it has spilled over into the streets of France itself. For decades, the French government balanced its domestic economy on the backs of African nations. That silent, invisible flow of money helped subsidize pensions, social benefits, and even gave the French government leverage in Europe. When Africa said no more, suddenly the cracks in France's economy widened, and the people of France, ordinary French workers, are feeling it directly. This is where the protests come in. France is burning, not figuratively but literally, grifting sprawled across monuments, statues of French leaders being defaced, highways and freeways blocked, entire transportation system frozen. The protest movement has even given itself a name: Block Everything. And that is exactly what they are doing. From logistics to freeways, from trains to airports, the French people are expressing their anger not only at Macron and his government, but at the economic betrayal that has left them stranded. The government has already taken away pensions. They have slashed holiday benefits. The social safety net France was once proud of is collapsing. Why? Because the lifeline they are depending on, African wealth, has been served. And Africa is not backing down. Leaders across the continent from West Africa to Central Africa are uniting in ways we haven't seen in decades. This is not yet just about one or two countries resisting France. This is about 14 nations collectively saying no more. For years, African youth on social media, African intellectuals, Pan-Africanists, and even everyday working class people have been calling out the parallelistic relationship, and now, finally, governments are acting. Let's not forget, France still had military bases in these countries until recent. But now, those bases are being dismantled. French soldiers have been told to leave. African nations are building their own militaries, strengthening their own defense systems, and laying on new alliances with each other, with Russia, with China, with Turkey. The old world order where France has guaranteed grip on Africa is collapsing. And this collapse is not just an African story, it's a French story too, because the unrest in Paris is directly tied to what Africa has done. The French elite underestimated Africa. They thought these countries would never dare to resist, that they would always bow to pressure. But the tables have turned. Now imagine the psychology of the French people. They are waking up to realization that their government, wealth, their pension, their holidays, their so-called property was built on the back of exploitation. And now that this exploitation is gone, France is broke. France is desperate, and the desperation is fueling even more protests, riots, fires, and instability. Think about this irony. France once painted Africa as unstable, corrupt, and chaotic, yet now it is Paris where chaos reigns. It is Paris where the fires burn. It is Paris where highways are blocked and the government is paralyzed. Africa has flipped the script. But let's zoom out for a second. What does this mean geopolitically for the United States? It means one of their closest European allies is losing influence fast. For the European Union, it means instability in a core member state. For Africa, it means independence and sovereignty are no longer dreams. they are becoming a reality. The question now is, how long can France hold on without Africa's resources? Oil, gas, uranium, cocoa, gold. France has relied heavily on African exports, even its nuclear energy program. The backbone of its electricity has depended on the uranium from Niger, with Niger cutting them off, with Mali standing firm, with Burkina Faso, Guinea, Senegal and others saying no more. The French energy grid itself faces threats. Imagine the irony. The so-called advanced Europe nation struggling to keep its lights on because Africa has finally took control of its resources. And here's another layer. Black Americans are watching. Across the diaspora, people are talking about what Africa is doing. For decades, Black Americans have criticized Africa for being too passive, too cooperative with colonial powers. But now, the conversation is shifting. Social media is filled with Black Americans cheering, applauding, even crying tears of joy, seeing Africans stand up and refuse to be exploited. Because at its core, this is not just about Africa versus France, it's about Black liberation worldwide. When Africa rises, it gives confidence to Black people everywhere that colonial system can be defeated. But make no mistake, France will not take this lying down. Already, there are rumors of covert operations, destabilization attempts, sanctions, and propaganda campaigns. France will try everything to claw back control, but the reality is, the balance has shifted. Africa is no longer the playground of colonial powers. These young nations with young populations are saying our future is ours. Now, the chaos in Paris is also symbolic. It represents the boom-barrel effect of colonialism. What you impose abroad eventually returns home. France has imposed poverty, instability, and unrest on Africa for decades. Now, that same unrest has come to Paris. The statues of French leaders that once stood as symbols of power are now covered in anger, defaced with graffiti. The streets that once represented luxury and culture are now burning. The French elite did not think Africans' decision would hit them this hard, but it has. And let's be honest, this is just the beginning. The more African assets itself, the more France's economy will crumble. The more France's economy crumbles, the more the French people will protest. And the more they protest, the weaker the French state becomes. It's a vicious circle, one that France cannot escape without facing the truth. Its colonial era is over. What we are witnessing is history, a global shift, the collapse of one of the last strongholds of direct colonial exploitation. For years, Pan-African thinkers have predicted this moment. For years, leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, and others called for Africa to unite against exploitation. Today, their words echo louder than ever. And here's the beauty of it. Africa is not just cutting France off. Africa is building alternative. They are creating their own financial systems, their own security alliances, their own technological infrastructures. They are not just resisting, they are creating. That is the difference this time. So as we watch Paris burn and as we watch an African nation stand tall, we are witnessing not just a political conflict, but a civilizational shift. The era of French dominance in Africa is dead, and with it, the illusion of French superiority is collapsing too. The world is watching, Black Americans are watching, and history will record this as the moment Africa finally said, enough.
And if you watched up to this extent, don't forget to please leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We are just here for educational and informative purposes. So lovelies, why not just share your thought? Subscribe to this channel if you're yet to do that, and I will see you lovelies when I upload the next one.